Hello everybody. Alrighty. I don't want to stall for too long. I don't know how many people are going to be joining us today. So let's just wait a little bit. Hello everybody. I managed to make it private or closed or whatever you want to call it. So hopefully no other people are going to be joining us and nobody's going to be interfering with us. Hi. Hello everybody. Okay, one thing is I don't want to ask you to send me like all those old regular pluses or whatever, but so if you just say hi Julia or whatever, it's going to be enough for me to understand that you're with me and the connection is stable and you can hear me. If for some reason you're experiencing some trouble with the sound or with the connection, don't send me anything then. So I'll understand just by the amount of hellos basically. Okay, so it seems like everybody is here, and okay, 40 people is enough, I guess, for me to just start. One thing that I just want to say, first of all, I haven't done this in a very long time, and I seem to be getting nervous. But yeah, I'll just try and speak slowly and calm myself down. Okay, first of all, I just want to say that, hi everybody. Okay, so I just want to say that apart from all those webinars that I actually did before, I don't know if you watched them or not, but all of them were mostly me like preparing a lot before the webinar because I didn't want to get lost, and I had this whole structure planned out, and I had all those topics and all those questions that I wanted to answer. This time I come to you absolutely naturally, and I literally have no idea what exactly I'm going to talk about, so I really wanted to be a little bit like improvised and yeah, natural, I guess. So if it's okay with you, I would really like more of your support and like questions and issues that you want to talk about, maybe a little bit like of a guidance, I guess. Let's call it this way. Okay, so let's start. I think I'm gonna start off with just telling you a little bit of my own story of me starting to teach online and how extremely stressful it was for me and how basically I was forced to do it. It all started 3 years ago. Obviously, it started when I moved to China and I literally didn't have a choice of keeping my students with me, well, just because of the distance reasons, right? So when I moved to China, I didn't even think about asking my students to stay with me because as I guess most of you are right now, I was really intimidated by even like a mere thought of teaching online because it was just such a whole new world for me, and I felt like you know, I believe that everybody has this sort of like doubt or hesitation of like, how can it even work, because you cannot even like touch a person, you know, there's no physical contact, and how can it be as entertaining or as efficient as a proper private class? So that's why I was really hesitant, and actually I wasn't even hesitant. I was hesitant when my first student was trying to convince me to have classes with him, but at first, when I first moved to China, I didn't even consider this as an option. So I was just like really focusing on my full-time job and didn't even think about it. But then my student who funny enough, I didn't even have private classes with. He was back from the old days of me teaching business English at a company in Russia, in Petersburg. So at that time, he just contacted me because after I had left, he tried out classes with different teachers, with different native speakers, and he was a little bit desperate. So he just texted me and he was like, Julia, could you please have classes with me? And I was really... I think it took him around a month or so, or even more, to convince me to start our classes because I really didn't think. All right, I got the first one question actually. What do you think the professional development path should be like? Which courses? Wait a second, is that connected to online teaching? Could you please specify a little bit, because I'm not sure if this question is no fear even when I started. Okay, well, good for you, because maybe, I don't know, maybe I was too young, maybe I was too inexperienced or whatever, maybe it was people who haven't tried it, because I still believe that there are so many teachers out there who feel that this is not the way to go about it, that this is the wrong way, that this is not as intimate as face-to-face classes can be. So I was probably a little bit influenced by that, I would say. And then, so back to my story. When I was convinced and I started having classes, I remember it took me such a long time to prepare for every single class, and I was very responsible. I am a perfectionist, let's call it this way, and so that's why it took me a lot of time to prepare like a lesson plan and do my research and find as many exercises and activities as how many years of experience teaching online do you have? Okay, so I started 3 years ago, and but that's like from scratch, basically. This was my first online class ever. That was 3 years ago, and I guess I went a long way from that, because now I would say, even though I still have my full-time job right here in Vietnam, as I guess everybody knows already, but at the same time, I feel that at this point in my life, online teaching is not a side job anymore. So if before that I felt like, okay, so I'm just doing online teaching because this is the way to keep my students, and this is just something different that I can do for myself just for a change, and also obviously it's extra money. But now I kind of feel like my full-time job here in my language center in Vietnam is actually sort of like a job, even though it's 18 hours of teaching. But I feel like every single time I come here, it feels like rest to me, because it doesn't require as much preparation, it doesn't require as much responsibility from me, and plus to that is, I guess I'm just like very familiar with all of that, and like more experience than online teaching. So yeah, 3 years. That was a very long answer to your question. Okay, so how I started it. So the way I did it at first, and also for those who have not started teaching online, I have a very valuable and pretty obvious advice for you, but at that time when I first started, it wasn't as obvious for me as it is now. Please save every single document. So make sure that on your laptop or whatever you're going to be using, your iPad or your computer, PC, it doesn't matter, any device, there has to be like some sort of folder with like online classes or whatever, and then that one divides further into your, let's say your students or your group students, right? And then that one also, well, it's just the way it is for me, but that folder also goes further into, let's say, homework, lesson plans, additional materials. Sometimes I would even have some sort of like a list of topics that we've already like gone through. And this way it's gonna save you, like this little tip is gonna save you so much more time, because now it doesn't seem like a very big deal to you, I guess, but eventually after a few years, it's gonna be something that you would turn to every single time. And I'm not saying that you're going to be copying all those materials and using them with every single student. No, obviously not. But it's just going to be like some sort of structured classes or like lesson plans that you can go to for ideas, you know, for inspiration, or you don't have to, like, you won't have to do as much research as initially you had to. So the way I go about it, I'm sorry, I skipped one question. There was a question. Let me just go into my group. I guess I can look at the comments right now so that I don't skip anything. What about checking homework? Do the students send the homeworks before the class and you check it before the class? Okay, so there's a specific way I do it, and I guess I can't really impose this on you because it's totally up to you. But the way I go about it is, I usually check homework before class, because I don't like wasting our time, because usually, you know, students have like lots of questions about it, and it can take quite a lot of time from your class. So I don't want this like, yeah, obviously homework is as important as your classes, but at the same time I don't want it to take away from my own lessons. So that's why usually I ask my students to send this homework, their homework, to me, let's say at least few hours before the class, or, well, Best case scenario, it would be 1 day before, so I can check it and I send them our feedback. And basically, in our class, we only go through the feedback that I already sent them. If they still have any questions, let's say, for instance, I sent them 15 mistakes, and usually most of the mistakes are pretty obvious or pretty understandable, but if they still are hesitant about a few of them, they can contact me. I mean, not contact me, but like during the class, the first, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 minutes we spend on just going through them and me maybe explaining again or making sure that they understand why it was a mistake. Yeah, so I definitely do not check homework in the class, even though it takes much more time from you, because this is your own free time that you invest right into checking homework. Okay, I have another comment. Here we go. Oh, but all my disks and clouds are full. Where to upload the material? Oh, no space. Really? Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. But there are so many clouds, right? Like Google or iCloud, or what is it called? The one that Apple uses. I guess there are so many different websites right now that you can store your stuff in. But to be honest, you can also have this the hard drive, right? I still have my hard drive, but to be honest, it's a little bit outdated. I only keep the material. Actually, I keep there only textbooks, like textbooks that I don't like refer to on a regular basis, so that they don't take up too much space on my laptop or in the cloud. I just keep them on the hard drive. So maybe just buy a hard drive, or even several USBs or whatever. Yeah, Bob, thank you. Buy USB drivers. That's what I was thinking about. Even though they are not very trustworthy, right? Because they can also break, or you can lose them, whatever. So I guess you can always, you have to have like a backup all the time. Okay, I think I got like much more comments there, right? How much time does it take you? I guess this one is about homework, right? Checking homework. Well, definitely, in the very beginning, when I first started, it would take me, depends on homework, I guess, it depends on the level, but maybe around like 10 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes. Now, I guess most of the homework that I send to my students, especially because all of the homework is usually like not just pages in the book, but we can talk about it later. Usually all my homework is basically individually structured for a precise person, so I know what exactly I'm looking for, and I know the answers to it. I know what I need to focus on while checking homework, so I would say it takes me around 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. Keeping in mind that my homework is usually like a very intensive one, like it's usually 5 to 6 pages. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating right now. It's definitely, sometimes it definitely reaches 5 to 6 pages, but okay, let's say from 3 to 6 pages, depends on the topic, and depends on like how many pictures it has and things like this. What about children, 7 to 10 years? Is it all right to have online classes with them? Good question, good question. First of all, I'm not sure that I'm qualified enough to answer this question because I've never had classes with children. The youngest age which I have ever taught, and I'm actually I'm still teaching this person, is 13 years old, and to my surprise, it has been working out pretty well. I'm enjoying it so much, and the kid that I'm teaching is also well, I guess I'm just also lucky because the kid is super smart and his English is pretty good and he's able to express his opinion, but it took me a few classes probably to deal with his sort of like reluctance and like lack of confidence, because I just felt that he was like very nervous at the very beginning, but now he's like, now our classes are amazing because we have this bond, and he relaxed a lot, and so he feels very safe and secure. So yeah, coming back to your question is that I've never tried teaching 7 to 10 year olds, but my friends did. I have a friend who used to work actually for for a Chinese company. That's what you can do, by the way, for those. This is just a little tip for those who really want to start online teaching, but they don't have any students. There are lots of websites. There are lots of companies in China or probably all around Asia. If you need to, please let me know. I can just do some research and make a posting about it with just a list of different websites or different companies that you can probably apply for and get a teaching job online. Those companies are usually based on teaching children in their classrooms. So basically, it's a, let's say, a public school, and they have a huge screen or a smart board somewhere, and you teach like a whole class of students from basically students just look at you at the TV, let's say, and you just broadcast. It's pretty interesting, and at first my friend, she told me that it was a little bit weird, I guess, and a little bit unusual, but she got into it. I guess this thing has rubbed off on her, and she started enjoying it, and it was pretty fun. And usually those classes don't last for too long. It lasts maybe one class lasts for like 30-45 minutes, so it's not like you're gonna have to come up. Oh, and usually lesson plans are also done for you, so it's not too much of a investment, I guess, if you can just have like a few classes per week and you can just try it out. It can be your trial period. It can be who knows, it might be your and you're gonna go ahead and get inspired and get more online work. So yeah, the reason why I'm mentioning it is because my friend tried it, and even though at first it was pretty challenging with children, and keep in mind that this is not just like one-on-one class, right, with children, but it would be like 6-7-year-olds, but like 30 or 40 of them in the classroom, and she still managed, and it was, I guess it was efficient, but unfortunately, I myself have never had such an experience, so I cannot comment on this. The only thing that I can talk about is my 13-year-old teenager that I teach online. Okay, do you work with adults and kids online? I guess I just answered this question, right? So all of my students, online students. So all of my students, actually, I guess my work is divided in two parts. My offline work here in Vietnam is only children from 6 to 15, 16-year-olds. My online job, except this teenager that I just talked about, the one who's 13 years old, everybody else is adults. So I don't have much of an experience with kids. Okay, Google Disk. All right, guys, thank you so much for your tips about storing the information. Do you use any boards? Okay. So first of all, when I like started 3 years ago, I only used Skype, which was a huge mistake. I don't want to denounce it or whatever, but Skype is crap. Like, I really try my best to actually steer clear of using Skype forever. It's a little bit complicated, especially with like regarding communication, like not even classes, but like, for instance, having calls with my family and friends and things like this. But I do believe that Skype is not very suitable for teaching online, and the platform that I use now, I guess, is like all of you are familiar with it, is Zoom. And I'm not sure how good it is in comparison with other platforms. Let me know if you have any other ideas, but Zoom is, I would say, it's very convenient. And even though right now I'm kind of like used to it, and I adjusted my teaching so that it's efficient, but I remember when I first started using it after Skype, I was like blown away. I was astonished like how convenient it is. So the reason why I started using Zoom instead of Skype was actually because of my speaking classes. And because Zoom actually allows you to, but that's for an extra payment. So as far as I know, if you want to have just private classes one-on-one, you don't have to pay anything. You just install Zoom and that's it. But if you want to have group classes or some other functions incorporated into your classes, you have to pay more. So I pay a monthly rate of something around $15, I think $15 per month, and this allows me to first of all have classes, group classes, up to 50 people or something. I've never tried this. Max that I had is 4 people excluding me, but there are other functions such as breakout rooms, which is extremely useful. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but that's what I do with my speaking classes. So obviously you can have a class, all 5 of you, yeah, for instance with me, it's me and my 4 students, but it's not very efficient when you need to speak, right? Because every single time when one person expresses their opinion, everybody else has to wait. And it steals away from your class because kind of like, I wouldn't call it a time waster, but it doesn't allow all of the participants speak as much as they want to. So that's why there is this function of breakout rooms. By the way, I'm not promoting Zoom or whatever, like Zoom is not paying me, just sharing with you my own experience. So breakout rooms allow you to divide those students into different rooms, online rooms, let's say, and this basically prevents them from listening to each other, from hearing each other, from interfering with each other. So let's say you have, let's say 6 students, and you can divide them into 3 rooms, like a couple of students in each, and what you can do is you can basically jump from one room to another one and control them, monitor them in just like in a matter of a few seconds, I guess, like as long as your connection is stable. And this is amazing, I guess, because this way your students can actually communicate to each other without waiting for a turn, you know, because obviously the most efficient dialogue, the most efficient way of communicating is a dialogue, right? Because it's kind of like just like reaction to each other's words, right? Yeah, so that was my answer to the question, do you use any boards? As far as I know, Zoom has a function of a board, or like some sort of like a whiteboard. I've never used it. The only things that I do use is definitely screen share, which I believe is also the most amazing thing ever, because it saves you so much time and it allows you to basically like point to where you want to like your student to look at, or it allows you to, let's say, highlight whatever you want your student to pay more attention to and things like this. So I believe that's amazing. And what else do I use? I use chat. They have the function of a chat, and then also a great thing is that after you're done with your class, you have this chat file saved on your laptop or your computer, whatever, and you can send it to your students. You can go through it if you need to. You can copy whatever. It's not a very comfortable, it's not a very convenient format, but I guess you can adjust it and just copy it into a different, like into Word, let's say. Okay, let's go on. What about absolute beginners who want too much and quickly? Okay, I guess an all-time favorite question of beginners. Okay, so I'm gonna be completely honest with you. The only person that I've ever taught, I wouldn't say she was an absolute beginner, but she was definitely, what do they call them? Like false beginners, right? Is that the term that they use for those people who have studied English, maybe in high school or somewhere else, right? But she probably knew like a few numbers, but she was still confusing them, and maybe ABC and things like this, a few colors. And I started teaching her exactly a year ago. And yeah, we're still together, and we've had like a very, I would say a very like solid progress. So I'd say beginners are definitely possible. It's totally up to you which kind of approach you want to take, you want to apply to them. I believe that even though I do believe in communication, I mean communicative approach or whatever, but with adults, I don't think English only approach works. With children, for sure. With children and teenagers, it works because they don't doubt anything and they don't really need those rules because they're still in this like flexible mode of just perceiving information like and taking it for granted. But with adults, they have to have the structure, especially with grammar. So that's why I don't believe in absolutely English only approach with total beginners. You need to explain to them some rules, but obviously still it has to be focused on more like communication than just like drilling the rules or whatever. And another like, yeah, this is a question that I can talk about just because you mentioned who want too much and quickly. I would say just tell them, hey, back off. You cannot learn a language to a point where you would be like confident and comfortable talking about pretty much anything in a matter of a few months. Like, this is what you need to tell your students, I believe, especially adults, because usually those are the ones who are like always in a hurry and who are like, oh my gosh, I need to learn English in 5 months up to this point. Tell them this is not how it is done. Like, just you can maybe show them, like, give them an example of a child who, when they are born, I mean, after they are born, it takes them around, what, like 4 or 5 years, right, to get to a point when they can actually communicate with others, interact, and like they're able to actually express their opinion in a sort of proper way. And they're still making mistakes, right, at this point, but at least they are they have enough tools, let's say communication tools, to interact with other people. So that's 5 years, and that's keeping in mind that those children, right, they are flexible enough. Their brain actually is in this mode of learning, perceiving, absorbing information. So it's not the same for adults, as everybody knows, right? So I think you just need to explain this to them and just tell them, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not a magician. And obviously it depends on like the frequency of your classes or how hardworking your student is and things like this, but it won't happen overnight. It's a matter of years and years. Like, you cannot expect, and it doesn't depend on like how good the teacher is, or it does depend on how hardworking your student is, definitely, for sure. And obviously I'm not like taking, off any responsibility from the teachers, for sure, but also you cannot guarantee anybody to learn language in 3-4 months. And to be honest, I do believe that all those people who in the past few years, there have been so many I don't want to insult anybody, but like fake teachers or something like that, who promise just miracles, wonders. I'm going to teach you English in 3 months, or I'm going to explain English grammar to you in like a matter of a few hours. Like, I'm sorry, but I think it's a scheme or a scam, or whatever you want to call it. It's just marketing. It's just a strategy to find more clients. It doesn't work this way. Okay. Let's move on. As I guess you all know, I'm pretty talkative, so you just have to control me. What do you think about CELTA? Okay, CELTA. What do you think about them? I have a very mixed feeling, let's say, about all those certificates and exams, because I still do not believe that you can teach a certain person to teach properly in 1 month. It can be some sort of like rudimentary knowledge, like some sort of base that they give you. But like, okay, let's say I've spent 4 years, in the university, as probably most of you have, right? Studying the process of teaching. And I still think that the most information, or the most methodology or strategy, or whatever you want to call it, that I got and that I have now, was through actually teaching, through actually making mistakes, through actually trial and error method, right? That's how you call it. And 1 month is not enough. I'm sorry. Like, yes, it can be, again, like just your kickstart. I still believe that at the end of the day, most people, or else is there, TKT, just because unfortunately those certificates matter much more nowadays than your actual experience and then your actual skills and passion, let's say. So it's basically like just a paper, that proves that you are a good teacher. But I don't know. I would definitely like to get a CELTA somewhere. Definitely not be because I want to improve my teaching skills, because I believe that there are other ways to do it. Okay, let's go on. I think I need to catch up with you guys. I would really appreciate if you can write us some websites with online teaching positions. Okay. I would definitely do that. I'll try my best to find a few. I'll talk to my friends because I have a few friends who use them, and I will do my research, and I will come up with a posting like this in a few days, okay? Just give me a little bit of time. If you have exercises to practice some grammar at the class, how do students do them? Orally. Okay, so this is a very tricky question, I guess, but to fully answer it, I guess I'm gonna have to share with you my view or outlook on teaching and on teaching English grammar, I guess. First of all, I'm pretty old-fashioned in this way, in the way that I still kind of stick to controlled practice, freer practice, free practice. I don't know if everybody's familiar with this. Maybe it's not a thing anymore, but I still believe that you cannot, for instance, just introduce grammar structure and go on into free practice and start speaking right away. You still have to sort of put them, somewhere in the right place in their mind and make sure that they practiced enough before they actually go on into an absolutely free speaking. So I usually do controlled practice, but just a few exercises, 1 or 2 that we do together would be, I don't know, filling in the gaps, just all the old ones, or multiple choice. What else do you have? Opening the brackets or whatever. So it would be 1 or 2 exercises, I think, at most. And then we would go on into speaking practice, but that would be a little bit more controlled, right? With for instance, when they have to just complete the sentence about themselves or answer the question, but they already have the structure in the question, so they have to basically, for example, invert it or whatever. And then after that, we would go on into absolutely free practice, if you can call it. I mean, if there might be any absolutely free practice during the class, I'm not sure about that. But to further answer your question, I still believe that, and that actually comes from my, from I guess my mentor. Let's call him this way. Back in my what was it, 3 years ago? Yeah, before I moved to China, I used to work for this company and teach business English, and we had this intensive training for a month or 2, I guess, with the boss, with our mentor. And I still believe that the way he taught us, the way he showed us what teaching has to be about is the right way, for me at least. So what he said is, obviously, English incorporates all of those skills, right? There are so many different skills, functions, there are so many different aspects in English that all of them have to be taken into consideration. And obviously, if you want to have a proper level of English, you have to focus on all of them. But at the same time, speaking, being probably one of the most important functions, not disregarding anything else, but still, most students, and we don't take into account all of those people who prepare for exams, or in job interviews, that's a different story, right? But for most people, speaking is still the priority, yeah, the prioritized, let's say, skill. But at the same time, speaking is the only thing that you cannot do on your own. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So you can listen to audiobooks, podcasts, you can watch movies, you can read books or articles in newspapers, you can write letters or write essays, and all of that you can do on your own. But speaking is the only thing. So that's why I still believe that even grammar-wise, you have to stick to speaking as much as possible during your class, I mean. Okay, let's move on. I don't know if I actually managed to answer your question, or maybe I just got carried away and I started speaking about something else. Let me know if you still are not sure about this. How quickly to check level of your student on first online lesson, sorry. Okay, so obviously it depends on what level they claim to have, and it depends on the age, but I still prefer speaking mostly. I can give them, like, depending again on the level, I can probably give them maybe a few exercises to do, but I still believe that speaking is the best way to understand how confident your student is, because unfortunately there are so many people who how to put it mildly, they have this knowledge of grammar rules, or they have like drilled, you know, all those vocabulary lists, but when it comes to speaking, they are extremely insecure, they're extremely self-conscious, and if they claim to have, let's say, intermediate level based on some grammar tests or on some usually like all those language centers, they have some sort of tests which are supposed to give you your like precise level, but then you start speaking to them and it's not even close to elementary, for instance. I'm sure you've probably come across such situations. So I would say speaking. So before starting my classes with a new student, I definitely arrange some sort of online meeting, let's say online chats, and I usually spend around 15-20 minutes asking them different questions. Obviously first just something very simple, like just talk about yourself, whatever you want to talk about, and then I just touch upon different grammar structures. So for instance, I would just like gently ask them something about like, oh, have you ever done this? And then I would see their answer, their response, and figure out if they're familiar with the structure, or if they can only understand it and like pinpoint in my speech, but they can never use it to answer, for instance. Yeah, so this would be the way to go about it, just from my own experience. When your students are not familiar with Zoom, but you need to have your first class ever, appear.in is a way out. You just need to register there and share a link with a person. Okay, Irina, thank you so much. I have never heard of this website or like platform, so I definitely take a look into it. And yeah, okay, here we go. Maybe I can make a posting of like all of the information that you shared with me also, because I don't know how many students, Jesus Christ. I keep calling everybody student. I don't know if it's a thing with you as well, but like sometimes, or either like I call everybody my kids, you know, it's just like, it's ridiculous. It's just this teacher, I don't know, sickness or whatever, psychological trauma, let's say. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you guys can actually follow through all those comments, but if you need to, after this webinar, I can actually make a posting and include all of the like materials or all of the links that you share with me as well, so that everybody can take a look at them. Okay, Zoom is great. We use it for international classes, let's say between my students and students from Brazil. It's very convenient. Yeah, definitely. And as far as I know, there are also lots of websites. Again, I'm going to try to find them for you and post them, but there are lots of websites that can give you the opportunity of connecting to students from all over the world. It doesn't have to be only Russian. So, for instance, one of the platforms that I've heard about is italki, and there's another one, I can't like recall it right now, but as soon as I do, I will tell you right away. Yeah, so there are lots of websites that you can register on, and unfortunately most of them, they do take some sort of commission or something like that, but I guess it can be like a good start for you. If you've never done this before, or if you are desperately looking for students, you can at least start with this and make sure that you get your own client, what is it called? Base? No, what do you call it? Like client network, let's say. Yeah, okay, let's move on. Do you prefer using particular basic student book to find different extra materials? Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for it, Amina. No, I do not use any specific student books. And I don't know if it's going to be much more time consuming for you or not, because obviously if you use some sort of teaching set with books and student books and teachers books, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to structure your class and choose the topics and things like this. But personally, me, I'm like, again, I'm a perfectionist, and there are literally no books that I have ever come across that would like evoke this sort of feeling inside of me, like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the perfect book. Like, from now on, this is the only thing that I'm going to use in my classes, and this is going to be as efficient as anything else, or like more efficient than anything else. No, like I've never come across any books like this. I don't know if you have. Let me know. Maybe I haven't been lucky enough. But when I prepare for my classes, basically I have a whole, and that's also one thing that I would recommend to you if you haven't done it yet. Please make sure that you have a folder with all the materials. So I have folders with, like, let's say worksheets, or all the books like on vocabulary, or all the books on grammar that I frequently use, or pronunciation, reading, functional language, different books on different topics and aspects of English that you can always refer to. So this way, every single time when I prepare for my classes, let's say I know that today we're going to be studying, I don't know, appearance, let's say, yeah. So I just go into different books and I try to just scan them through, or, well, because I've already used them so many times, I know where exactly I should go to, and find the exercises, and then I just screenshot them. Well, either if it's a PDF file, I just drag it onto my desktop and, you know, maybe, for example, cut out the edges or whatever, and I just, for example, if it's a website, let's say, sometimes I use their online resources, I just use a screenshot option, and yeah, screenshot a certain exercise and then just copy it into the file. So all of my lesson plans, all of my classes are basically based on different books, different resources, different, let's say, yeah, sometimes I come up with my own exercises. Yeah, sometimes I make my own activities, and my lesson plan looks a little bit scattered, I guess, because there are so many different things from different resources. But I still believe that if you are an experienced teacher, and if you know if you have some sort of understanding of what your class should look like, this is the best way, because student books, however great they could not really give you like enough practice, or they cannot be they cannot have this individual approach that you can actually give to your students. I don't know if it makes any sense. Let me know if you agree with me. So yeah, no books for me, only just resource books, or certain books that focus on a certain aspect of English, and then I just use just certain, again, precise exercises or activities from there. Okay. Julia, how would you describe in general main difference between classic teaching materials and materials for online teaching? Okay, that's a very vague question. Okay, not sure how to answer this. Like, what do you mean about teaching materials for online teaching? Okay, maybe I can tell you that obviously there are a few things that you cannot do offline. I'm sorry, you can definitely do offline, but you cannot do online, because, for instance, you need to cut something, or it has to be some sort of physical interaction with the piece of paper or whatever. But to my mind, most activities can be adjusted to the online version as well. So, for instance, it can be typing in, yeah, it can be you highlighting them, it can be you covering something up if you need a person to guess something. And there's always PPT. We had to come to this point when I started speaking about my favorite PowerPoint presentations, and this is something that I use every single time with my teenager students, with my beginner, well, she's not beginner anymore, like elementary student or whoever. Yeah, I believe that this is just the best. This is the best for offline as well, because it's so fun and it's so interactive, and it gives you so many different opportunities. But at the same time, online is just, it's so easy, especially with Zoom, because you don't even have to send it to anybody, or you don't have to like guide them through it, because it can get a little bit complicated when you're like on different slides or whatever. But if you share your screen with your student and you open a PPT and you just go through it by yourself, you can actually again, like, click on whatever you want. You can go back, you can fast forward, you can highlight whatever you want. So I believe this is just amazing. Yeah, but again, because you said you asked the main teaching class material, online teaching, you see, I wouldn't call myself a classic teacher. That's why most of the things that I use offline can be adjusted to be used as well. Sort of group competition stuff or whatever. But yeah, this is, I don't know how to answer it because the question is pretty vague, but I tried my best to answer it. Okay, how do you usually control your students speaking? What I mean is speaking, that one. Do you have any tips to manage the time of Okay, I see. Even though I try always to be like a little bit like polite and tender, a very important question actually, and a very important issue, because oftentimes there is a couple which consists of a person who is like super talkative and confident, right, and can never shut up or whatever. That's a little bit harshly said, but yeah, like have so many things to say and they're so confident in themselves that they would just go on speaking, and then the other person is just too shy or too insecure or maybe just like too polite to just basically interrupt this person. And I believe this is definitely your responsibility. So you have to stop them. You have to, obviously you need to like don't just interfere with their speech whenever, but like try to find this certain, maybe like a pause, you know, between the sentences, or whenever one point that he was talking about or she was talking about finishes somehow, you have to intervene and you have to either ask a question to the other person who wasn't speaking, just like sort of like redirect their attention, you know, to another person, because sometimes, yeah, that person who is shy most likely is not going to be doing it by themselves. It's going to be too much of a stress for them. Yeah, so it's definitely your responsibility, I would say. You have to control this, you have to manage it, and you have to inspire and encourage the other student to speak as well by asking them questions. So sometimes for those people who are too shy, who are too maybe like unconfident, you really need to provide them with this possibility of actually answering questions. So there has to be, they cannot just freely speak, you know. So there has to be some sort of basis for them to structure, or like to base, to what's the word? I cannot come up with a proper word. To yeah, I guess to base their speaking on. So there have to be like those pillars, let's say, that you provide. Okay. All right, so thank you guys for agreeing with me. Do you play games with students and private classes online? Do you think it's efficient? I'm a huge fan of games, to be honest. I don't know if you've noticed, but half of my community is actually about games. And the reason why I love it, actually, I believe I've had a webinar, right, on teaching like by playing games or whatever. But yes, I definitely play games, and I believe that this is the best way to teach. And it actually doesn't depend on the age, because every single person loves playing games. Or if they don't, then they are freaks. I'm sorry, but like games is always fun, right? And obviously different people prefer different types of games, but I definitely believe that even adults, even like older teenagers, still prefer games, still prefer competitions, or some sort of role plays or things like this. And the way I love, like the reason I love it is because usually when people are focused on winning, not being defeated, and or on achieving some sort of result in a game, they absolutely forget about using English. English becomes just a tool for them to reach some sort of, or like to accomplish something, to obtain, I don't know, whatever, like points or score or whatever, yeah? So they completely forget about English being the main focus. So I believe this is, I guess, the main reason why I use games all the time. So in private classes, and definitely offline classes even more, probably because there's more opportunities there. Okay, which books do you prefer for adults? I guess I just basically disregarded books at all just a few minutes ago, but there are a few books that I refer to, again, just to basically pick a few activities from there, but none of them are teachers, like, sets of student books. You know what I mean? Like, no, what are those? Like, I don't even remember anymore. Like, Speak Out, right? Or English File and things like this. I still have a set of face-to-face books on my laptop. So sometimes, like, I would say, like, pretty rarely, but I do open them, and sometimes, usually it would be still teachers resources, or what are they called? Teachers books, with, like, different activities, and I would just maybe take something from there. But definitely not students' books. Definitely not those, like, course books that people use. Okay, the connection in Zoom is better than in Skype. Oh, tell me about it. Like, don't even get me started on this, because Skype is just, it's just so annoying, and I can't even believe this, because I used to think that the problem with, like, with Skype, or, like, with my calls, was actually connected to my unstable connection to my Wi-Fi, until I started using Zoom, and it turned out that it's not the problem of my Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is actually perfect. It's just Skype. Skype messes up with your connection somehow. So I completely agree with you. Zoom is so much better, and Zoom is so much more stable, and it doesn't demand, I guess, as strong a signal as Skype does. Secondly, you can make a better recording of the lesson to watch it later and discuss all the details. Yes, definitely. This is also a really nice function that if you want to, you can just record your whole class, and you can either rewatch it yourself, which is also pretty useful, right? Because you can reflect on whatever you've been doing. And also you can send it to your students if they need to, if you feel safe about it, if you feel secure. Okay, a good way to make students speak equally is divide them in pairs and get a short feedback from them. Yeah, that's exactly what I said, right? How many lessons a day do you have? Whew, I guess it differs from like a day to another day, but if we're talking about online classes, right? You're asking me, could you please clarify this? Are you asking me about my whole work time, or is it just online classes? So I would say, on average, every single day I have around 2 classes. Yeah, 2 online classes, whether they are private classes or group classes, but I try my best not to go overboard with this, because I still have my full-time job at the same time. So I know that I'd just get too exhausted, and I would lose my motivation. I would just get, like, yeah, I would burn out. So that's why usually it's around 2 classes, 2 online classes. I think I have, like, a few days when I tend to have 3 classes, but also not all the time, because they can get canceled and things like this. And that's another topic to talk about, right? How unstable online teaching is. Well, actually, that's not even about online teaching, but that would be more on just like working for yourself, right? Freelancing. How much time does your lesson take? Okay, a very good question again. All my classes, except group classes, because that's a different story, and that's, again, a different focus. But my normal classes, like the ones that I would have with, like, you know, one-on-one classes, let's say, yeah, they would be an hour and a half, 90 minutes. And again, based on my own experience, I'd say this is the best time you could possibly find, because 1 hour is really not enough, especially if you check homework during the class, because then after you have checked their homework, it's going to be like, okay, half class is already done. So, and sometimes actually, like, really shy students, for instance, they would just get, like, started, you know, by the time, like, 1 hour has passed, they would be, like, re-energized, or, like, at least, like, get some of their confidence or whatever. Like, they would just get used to speaking English, and then that's it, the class is done. So I would say 90 minutes is a preferable time for me. With a teenager, I have 1 hour, but that's actually due to just my inability to devote more time, and also because of the time difference. And actually, to be honest, still, like, even though we have like claimed this class to be 60 minutes, we never really finish on time. We usually have like 70 minutes, maybe around that, 75. With the speaking classes, with the group classes, this is also the thing that I'm trying to work on. But I sometimes, I'm a very passionate person, and sometimes I just get carried away. So even though initially when I first started my speaking classes, they were supposed to be 90 minutes each. Yeah, it never is, to be honest. Every single class is, I would say, around 1 hour, 45, 50 minutes, sometimes even 2 hours, because, but that, it's a different story because you have 4 people and all of them are confident enough to express their opinions. So sometimes you just don't really have enough time to, like to discuss all of the things that you wanted to, and to go through all of the activities that you wanted to. So I'm still figuring this out, because I believe 2 hours, I guess, is a little bit too much, maybe for teacher, I guess, because sometimes I get a little bit too exhausted, or it's like, well, it's a lot, you know. If you have a speaking class, for instance, for 2 hours, and then right after this, like I have a few days when it's class after class in a row, like consecutive, and if you have like a class of 2 hours and then another class of 2 hours right after, it's a little too much. But yeah, for now, this is I haven't found a solution to this, let's say. Okay, let's move on. How do students pay? Class by class, or is it a fixed sum per month? If it's okay to answer it. Sure. Okay, so with the private students, most of them pay class by class because I just don't want to have this responsibility, I guess. I do have a few students who pay for, like, I have a student who pays for 10 classes right away, but that's probably just because we are so, like, I can't even call us, like, each other, like, just a student and a teacher, because we've been like, together, you know, for a very long time, so we trust each other completely, and it's like, it's just easier for him. I have a few students who pay like for a few classes, or like, but mostly it's just class by class, whereas with speaking classes it's a different story, because there is a huge responsibility for other students as well, right? Because if you miss a class and there are 3 students, for instance, well, I mean, when the class is supposed to be with 4 students, and I can divide them and break them into those rooms, and they can speak to each other, then when another student doesn't come, besides me losing money, obviously, yeah, but it's also, it comes to the point when we have 3 students, and it's either, like, we have a choice, either they work, the 3 of them, yeah, and basically it's also steals away from the speaking time, or we break into pairs where I work with another student and the other 2 people work together, but that means that I cannot monitor them, and like, I cannot help them out, I cannot observe them, and I cannot be like this guide and support that they need sometimes. So that's why I have established a rule of 4 classes, so which is basically a month, because we have a speaking class every single week. So yeah, this is how I go about it. 4 classes at a time. Okay. Did you pass any international exams such as CAE? What do you think about them? Oof, that's an absolutely, how old am I? I just randomly saw this question. I am 27, turned 27 2 months ago. Cannot believe this, but for some reason, you know how sometimes people think that they're 1 year younger because they get used to saying, oh, I'm 26, for instance, and then even after they turn 27, they still continue saying that they're 26. This year I have a different situation. Every single time when a person asks, how old am I? I just randomly say 28, or like this was my first reflex to say 28. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but I feel like I'm 1 year older. Okay, back to the exams. I think I've already stated my opinion about any sort of exams. Unfortunately, I have not come across an exam which would like be unbiased and objective and actually genuinely structured the way, like, I can't even like imagine an exam would actually show us everything that a person can, you know. So like, yeah. To be honest, I'm not a fan of exams. I'm planning to pass CPE, not CAE, because I guess for my own experience, and so that I can see what it is, you know, and if, for instance, people turn to me for help and I can actually guide them through this. And yeah, but I would definitely not do this, you know, because preparing for an exam is going to help me out to improve my English, because I still believe that there are other ways, there are other motivation purposes or whatever. Like, there are other ways how you can improve your English. You don't have to pass any exams. Obviously, you do have to pass an exam if you need to, like, enter a university, let's say, or what else is there, get a job abroad, or, you know, there are different goals that demand a CAE or an IELTS, yeah. But just for yourself, I would say do it only if you feel like this is going to be an extra motivation for you, or maybe just because you want to get familiar with something new and be qualified, let's say, or experienced enough to teach or to prepare these students, you know, for an exam like this. Because obviously it's a little bit weird when you prepare a student for an exam that you haven't passed yourself. Do you use Russian language at your classes for grammar explanation? So that depends, for sure. So I would say that the only person that I still sometimes use Russian language for is that student that I just talked about like half an hour ago, the one who I started with as a beginner, and now she is like upper elementary or something like that. Yes, sometimes I resort to using Russian. I try my best not to anymore, because her English is good enough to understand like basic things or basic structures. And to be honest, now at this point, at this stage of her English, I don't think she really needs any explanations. She just needs to basically see and just herself, just basically understand how it works. So, and I believe that most of the time I can still do it by just giving her lots of different examples, or yeah, or like just showing her a table with grammar rules or whatever. So there are different ways how you can explain it without using Russian. But so on this note, any other, like every single student her, I never use Russian. Like literally, swear to God, like there would be like such a rare occasion when I would say like one word in Russian, just because it would save me so much more time, you know. If like, I mean, I would waste so much more time trying to explain some word, for instance, or just because, well, sometimes I get super lazy explaining something. But 99% of the time, I speak English to all of my students, like not even. Yeah, I guess. Well, because besides her, I guess all of my students are intermediate and higher. So if there are any students of mine here, I don't know, I'm not sure, but yeah, please prove it. Please confirm it. Have I ever spoken Russian to you? I don't think so. I cannot recall anything. Maybe like a word or two, I don't know, in half a year or something. But yeah, I cannot recall it. How do you find students? I do not look for any students because I'm fully booked. And actually I have so many different projects on my mind. I have so many different ideas. I really want to yeah, like start a pronunciation course, which I've been like contemplating about for a very long time, but I don't really have time for that right now. But I really want to like try to squeeze in this idea. But finding students, to be honest, it might sound a little bit cocky, I guess, and maybe a little bit harsh, but I believe that you always have to strive to become a better teacher, work on your English, to improve your methodology and things like this, and make sure your students enjoy your classes in the first place, besides just getting results. You know, it's very important that your students like and enjoy your classes and like relish every single second of it. And then it's, even though, you know, as old-fashioned as it may sound, the word of mouth still works, and it's still the most common way of getting students. If your students are absolutely satisfied with your job, they would still recommend you to other people, right? Or for instance, if you want to switch to online teaching, your current students would not want to lose you, and they would still move with you to online teaching if they are hesitant, even if they don't feel like, because you don't give them any other choice, still move with you. But apart from this, yeah, there are so many different platforms. There are so many platforms or websites where you can find, like, you know, all those tutoring websites. I'm sure that I haven't used them for a very long time, but I'm sure that now there has to be an option of getting online, like, students, you know, to get like a tutoring, like, private class, but online as well. I will, like I promised you already, and yeah, I just confirmed this again. I will try my best to make a posting about this, and try to make a list of all the websites where you can find all of this information, where you can search for students, where you can maybe register, and maybe this platform or whatever is going to help you out to look for students. Okay, at this age you're so wise and experienced. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to read it out loud, but yeah, thanks. I don't think I'm wise. I'm getting there, I guess. Maybe in I don't know, 30 years I'll be wise, but now I'm just like on the way. Okay, do you have any students who don't do their homework? Obviously you have, but how do you motivate adults? They're supposed to do that without any control as they're adults, but experience shows that sometimes there's real issue. Any tips to push the coach potatoes? Thanks in advance. Yeah, the all-time tricky question of doing homework. To be honest, I have changed my mind about this a few times, I guess. Even though I consider myself a pretty strict teacher and I try to push my students, and actually I remember that there was a period of time when I actually told my students, like, especially the ones who are like teachers or who are very motivated and who actually need, you know, like some progress as fast as possible, for instance, or as efficient as possible, I would tell them, okay, if you don't send me your homework one day before, we cancel the class. Like, that's it. You don't get to have a class. But I don't know how confident you are in this, you know. I don't know how, like, if it's gonna influence your work or whatever, like, because at that point my online teaching wasn't really my priority, like prioritized income. So and for me it's really important, especially for students who only have classes with me once a week. I believe it's not enough, and I try to explain to them that 1.5 hours per week is not enough. Like, it's just such a tiny portion of your time. Imagine in 7 days, 24 hours, yeah, each of them, and you only spend 1.5 hours on English. Like, what do you expect? How can you expect how can you expect to progress like at a rapid speed? It's just not possible. But at the same time, quite recently I have realized that you can't really push too much, because there are adults that, you know, that are motivated, but literally they do not have time, or they, like, obviously everybody is always about, you know, like, it's a matter of prioritizing, obviously, but still they have other priorities, and English is not a priority. Like, it's not high enough priority, let's say, yeah, for them to devote too much time to it, or there are like some certain emergencies or whatever. And I can tell you from my own experience, I'm a pretty lazy student myself, strict a teacher as I am. Right now I'm learning Spanish again, and also, by the way, online. So here we go. I'm not only an online teacher, I'm an online student as well. But I'm having such a hard time doing homework, to be honest. Like, I'm having a very hard time completing it on time, and you know, actually finding the time and dedicating it to just sitting there and like completing all my exercises, you know, with like a lot of concentration and with a lot of effort. Yeah. So I think you have to find this sort of balance when you are lenient, you know, towards some students or towards some situations, in some situations, but at the same time, you can also like allow yourself to be a little stricter and put some sort of limitations or restrictions on your classes or on homework presents or whatever. Do you have a teaching degree? Yes, I do. I have a degree which I actually currently lost, but that's a different story. So I don't know where it is. I do have a degree. I graduated from Herzen State Pedagogical University, which is in St. Petersburg, and that was 7 years ago. I can't even count anymore. Like 8 years ago? 8 years ago. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. 8 years ago? No, that's not possible. I'm 27, right? So it should be 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Okay. That's such a relief. 6 years ago. Okay. How did you learn language? How did I learn English language? Well, the same way as everybody does, right? I started learning it at school, back at school, and I just continued learning it throughout my whole life, and I'm still learning it. I'm still working on my English every single day, and I still watch and read every single thing in English only. All of my friends, you know, native speakers, and like, it doesn't even matter from which country they are, I still constantly tell them, okay, whenever I make a mistake, whenever I mispronounce something, please pinpoint this and correct me. Don't feel awkward or embarrassed by doing that. Every single time I tell them, okay, need to this help, and it has helped me a lot. Just recently, actually not recently, today, I went to a museum here in Hanoi with my friend from South Africa, and I learned a few new words there. Posthumously, I think it was posthumously. And indomitable, I don't remember the word. Like, they were very complicated words, but like, yeah, I'm still working on it every single day. So yeah, I guess I cannot really give you like a universal answer of like how did I learn language, how did I learn the English language. Yeah, it's just by a million of different ways, but a lot of it like demands hard work, for sure. Do your students use English-Russian dictionaries to look up new vocabulary? Depends on the level, but if we're talking about anything higher than pre-intermediate, intermediate, no. I restrict this. Obviously, I cannot control this, especially online, but I usually say, I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, like, if you want to improve your fluency, if you want to be able to speak at a certain pace without making pauses, without actually like structuring a sentence inside of your head before spitting it out, you need to you need to stay clear of all English-Russian dictionaries as much as possible, because it steals away your time, because it influences your fluency, it influences your it's just a really bad way. Like, in the very beginning, obviously, yes, it's the only way you can go about it, right? You cannot like, if you don't speak English, if you don't have enough vocabulary to understand the definitions or examples, obviously this is the only way. Well, actually, now that I think about it, it's not the only way, right? Because there are so many words that you can explain by pictures, or just from the context, or by videos, or even gestures sometimes, you know. But obviously there are certain I guess concepts that you cannot explain without using Russian. But as soon as a certain student gets to a certain point in their language, then in their language learning process, let's say, I'd say stay away from Russian, because translation is not the right way to learn English, unfortunately, or any other foreign language, because you should actually try your best to tear apart this connection. There has to be no connection at all between Russian and English, and that's what I have now, and that's the only reason why well, not the only reason, but like one of the main reasons why I can speak fluently is because I never even think in Russian. Like whenever I speak English, Russian is nowhere to be found inside my head, and that's why I guess I suck at translation every single time during my classes or just in my personal life. Somebody asks me to translate, for instance, Russian to English or vice versa. I can never do this, or it's gonna take me, I don't know, like 2 minutes. I don't have this connection anymore, and that's why I believe that you should never look up words in the Russian dictionary, just like only as an emergency, as a last resort, but not the only area. Only English definitions, examples, what else? Synonyms work great, I think. Okay, where do you place information about your projects? VK, definitely VK. Yeah, I think that's my like base platform. I do not like Instagram. I was actually hacked just a few weeks ago. So Instagram, like I'm not a big fan of Instagram. So it's definitely VK. For now, VK is the main social network that I use for my projects. Okay, how do your students find you? Is that the same question as like how do you find your students? Or is it some sort of different? Can you please elaborate on this, because I'm not sure how exactly I should answer this. Instagram, I do have an Instagram, but it's for now, because I was hacked again a few weeks ago, it's private. If you're interested in my Instagram, please send me a private message on VK, and then I will send you my Instagram account, and you can request to join it or whatever, to subscribe, because for now I'm a little bit more cautious after having been hacked. Okay, awesome pronunciation. Do you practice shadowing technique? I don't practice anything anymore, to be honest, because I've already invested too much time. By the way, thank you so much for your compliment. I'm like, I think I only have like around 5 to 10 minutes left to talk to you, so that's why I'm like trying to rush and try to go through every single question, but thank you for your compliment. For now, like I've stopped focusing on my pronunciation because I've invested too much time. Not too much time, there's never too much, but enough time, I guess, into my pronunciation, and it has worked out for me, I guess, and there's been like too much, again, not too much is a bad word, is a negative connotation, but enough effort that I put into my pronunciation, and for now the only thing that I do is again, I ask my friends to correct me if I ever mispronounce something, and sometimes I wouldn't call it a shadowing technique, because it's definitely not something that I focus on, but for instance, if I'm watching a movie or if I'm listening to a song or something like that, and I hear a certain word pronounced in a certain way that I like, you know, and then like, okay, I feel like, or like a certain maybe collocation or combination of a few words, or even a sound, like sometimes I can just come across a person, a certain like movie character or a singer who the pronunciation of whom I really enjoy, then I would just like basically repeat it. So let me give you an example. Let's say, or like for instance, there are certain words that I really enjoy pronouncing, like for instance, I love this word, I don't know if you have it, but there are just like a few words that I just love the way they sound in English. For instance, delirious. I don't know why, but I just enjoy this word a lot. So say if I hear somebody pronounce delirious or any other word that I enjoy the way it sounds, I would definitely pronounce it out loud. As weird as it may sound, yes, especially if I'm alone, or actually especially if I'm with somebody else, but I would actually say it out loud. And I think it's important to actually make sure that you repeat this word and you use your own voice, not just like fixate it, not just try to fixate it in your mind, you know, exactly how this person said it, but actually try to imitate it. But I would do it only regions. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for staying with me. Okay, any other questions? So there's one person who's experiencing some sort of connection problems. I'm not sure if it's me or you, but I'm sorry about it anyway. Okay, are there any questions that I haven't answered? Maybe I have skipped through some messages or comments. Let me know. Or, yeah, have I answered at least some of your questions? Again, I am very sorry about maybe not this webinar not being as useful as I was hoping for, but to be honest, I believe that this topic has been covered by so many teachers, by so many teachers who probably are even more experienced than me, even more, like I'm saying, like I'm super experienced, just 3 years, you know, of online teaching, but like teachers who have more experience, maybe who have more tips for you. For now, like I literally feel like the only thing that I can tell you like is, first of all, please don't get discouraged or don't get frustrated or overwhelmed by the way other people might talk about it, because I know that there are certain people who might try to put you down or demotivate you and tell you, oh, that's too complicated, or online teaching is not a thing, you know, it's not efficient, it's not effective. Don't listen to them, please. Such people, either they are from a different generation where people literally do not understand how it is possible to work in your, you know, house at home and with a cup of those are the people who actually want everybody else to fail. I'm sure that it's viable, it's doable, it's possible. So please just go on. If you haven't tried it, or if you have tried it and it was a failure, please continue trying to find your way, trying to find your own teaching style, online teaching style and methodology and lesson plans or whatever works for you best. I would say, yes, I can give you some tips, I can give you my outlook on this, but at the end of the day, it's all about your own experience and you trying to adjust, trying to adjust it, I guess, like according to your personality, according to your preferences. I wanted to say something else about teaching online. Do you speak only English during your lessons? Guys, I'm so sorry, but I think I've answered this question. If it's possible for you to rewatch this webinar, because I don't feel like answering it again and like boring other people who have already listened to this. So could you please go back and listen to it? Yeah, okay. Everybody's just saying thank you. Thanks to you. Huge thanks to you. Thank you for being with me. And I'm sorry again for not giving you anything more precise. I promise to you that I'll come up with some sort of postings about websites and things like this, platforms that you can use, and maybe even I'll think about like posting books or things like this that I can maybe advise you or recommend you to use. Maybe I can even post, let me know if it could be interesting for you if I post some sort of a lesson plan, let's say, an example of a lesson plan that you could refer to, and you can see like what kind of structure I have during my classes or what kind of activities I do. If that's... Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas! Jesus Christ, I forgot about this. I totally forgot about this. I'm so sorry, you guys. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Merry Orthodox Christmas to you. Totally forgot about this. I promise that I'll take, let's say, this week and try to focus on online teaching and on the way I do it, on the materials that I try to use on the websites that you can that could help you to find more students and hopefully make this topic or make this webinar a little bit more useful. But please let me know in the private messages or maybe here in the comments or anywhere else what kind of topic you want me to talk about next time, because again, teaching online, I've only chosen this topic because everybody was super interested in this. Everybody has lots of questions about it, but at the same time, I'm actually more interested in other topics that I would like to talk about. And I'm gonna post a survey again listing all of the topics that I would prefer to talk about, so please participate in this. vote for a topic that you would like me to talk about. Again, Merry Christmas to you, Happy New Year. I wish you the best holidays. I guess most of you have a few days left, right? And thank you for staying with me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for all of your comments, all of your gratitude that you expressed to me, and it just means so much to me. I just want to let you know that every single comment, every single message to me, every single kind word means the world to me, because it motivates me, it inspires me, and it helps me to never give up, even if I feel like depressed or maybe discouraged. So thanks a lot for all of your support, all of your how do you call it? Yeah, it's just really rewarding. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go, and I'll just wish you the best, and I wish you to find the courage and to find the motivation and let go of that fear or those doubts and hesitation, and start teaching online. Just forget about everything, forget about all of your insecurities or doubts, and just try. Just start doing it, and then gradually you're gonna understand the process. You're gonna sort of like go with the flow, and just baby steps, you know, and learn how to do it properly in your own special way. Okay,